All right, so imagine this, right? You're in the middle of this super intense game, global trade, stakes are high, everything's on the line.
Feels a bit like a poker game where the rules keep changing, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And suddenly, bam, unexpected move hits the table. New tariffs from the U.S., and guess who's right in the line of fire? Telangana, April 2025.
Talk about a curveball, right? And Telangana is not just a bystander. They're major players, especially when it comes to India's exports, particularly in IT and pharmaceuticals.
Absolutely. So today we're taking a deep dive into exactly how Telangana, a crucial hub for those exports, is handling these new U.S. tariffs. We've got some fresh insights, the initial reactions, the potential strategies everyone's talking about, all that good stuff. We're going beyond the headlines, beyond the initial shock, to figure out what this really means for Telangana, what challenges they're facing, and maybe, just maybe, uncover some hidden opportunities that might come out of all of this.
I'm really curious to see how this unfolds. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's paint a picture of the scale here. Just how important are these sectors, IT and pharmaceuticals, to Telangana's overall economic landscape?
Oh, they're absolutely vital. We're talking about the backbone of India's exports in many ways. Just to give you an idea, IT exports alone were projected to exceed a staggering Rs 3 lakh crore. That's just massive.
Wow, that's huge. Okay, so this is a big deal for Telangana, and then these tariffs come along. And the timing, if I recall correctly, was particularly interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. The U.S. announced these tariffs just a couple of days before this 90-day pause kicked in, April 8th, 2025. Talk about a tight deadline. So naturally, everyone's scrambling, trying to figure out what to do next.
So how did Telangana react in those initial moments? Was there a sense of panic, or were they more prepared than one might expect?
Well, Telangana's IT and Industries Minister, D. Sridhar Babu, he came up pretty quickly and addressed the situation. And you know what? There was a distinct lack of panic. Sure, he acknowledged the challenge, but the real emphasis was on finding the opportunities within this upheaval.
That's a pretty proactive approach. Did this translate into concrete actions, or was it more of a wait-and-see approach?
Oh no, they definitely jumped into action. Minister Sridhar Babu and his team immediately started reaching out to industry leaders in both IT and pharmaceuticals. They wanted to assess the potential impact, get a sense of the possible damage, and most importantly, start working on strategies to mitigate any negative effects.
Okay, so it sounds like a very hands-on approach. So let's break down those potential effects, shall we? Starting with IT and pharmaceuticals. What are the main concerns with these tariffs?
Well, the immediate concern for both sectors is the potential for increased costs. I mean, these tariffs make their services and products more expensive for U.S. buyers, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that could lead to a decrease in demand, which of course would hit their profits. And beyond the immediate financial hit, there's this cloud of uncertainty hanging over everything. It makes planning for the future, making long-term investments really difficult.
Makes sense. Now, what about agriculture? How are they dealing with this tariff situation?
Agriculture is a bit more complicated. It's kind of a mixed bag, to be honest.
How so?
Well, on the one hand, farmers might get hit with higher costs for imported equipment and supplies. These tariffs, they don't just affect what's being sold, they also impact what's being brought in from outside.
Oh, right, and think of that.
And then there's the concern about some of Telangana's main agricultural exports to the U.S., things like rice and cashews. Those could face some difficulties too. But it's not all doom and gloom.
Really? So what's the silver lining here?
Well, a big part of the strategy is to look beyond the U.S., explore new markets, especially in Southeast and West Asia. It's all about diversification, spreading the risk. In fact, M.K. Dhanuka from Dhanuka Agrotech Limited, he was quite optimistic about this approach, exploring these new avenues.
Interesting. So sort of turn a challenge into an opportunity.
Exactly. And here's another interesting angle. These high tariffs the U.S. has imposed on China, remember, those are significantly higher than what India faces.
Right, around 104% versus 27%.
Exactly. And some experts believe this discrepancy could actually benefit India in the long run, make their products more attractive to U.S. buyers.
So sort of a competitive advantage emerging from this situation.
Yeah, especially for products with higher value added. And Dhanuka also highlighted that if India plays its cards right, smart tax reforms, better infrastructure, especially for things like the cold chain, that advantage could become even more pronounced.
Fascinating. It seems like there's a potential domino effect happening here with unforeseen consequences. Now, let's talk textiles. The outlook there seems surprisingly optimistic, despite all this tariff talk. How come?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Suresh Kumar Singhal from the Federation of Telangana Chambers of Commerce and Industry, he was quite confident. Again, it all comes down to those tariff numbers. India's at 27%, Bangladesh, a big competitor in textiles, they're at 37%. And China's way up at 104%.
So a potential window of opportunity for Telangana's textile industry.
Absolutely. The idea is that U.S. buyers might shift their sourcing from Bangladesh to India to take advantage of those lower tariffs. Singhal also mentioned the possibility of diplomatic solutions between the Indian and U.S. governments to smooth things over, which could further help the sector.
So we see this varied impact across different industries, some sectors facing more difficulties than others. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the political reactions to all of this. We had some critical viewpoints.
Yeah, K.T. Ramarao, the BRS working president and former IT minister, he wasn't exactly thrilled with the situation. His biggest concern was the potential impact on India's overall export performance, and he was worried about how this whole thing would affect investor confidence.
Did he have any specific criticisms about how the governments were handling this, either the state or the national government?
Yeah, he expressed concern about what he perceived as a lack of a clear, decisive action plan, especially when it came to safeguarding the IT sector, which, as we've discussed, is a massive part of the economy. He felt that both the union and state governments needed a more proactive and robust strategy to navigate these turbulent waters.
So, taking all of this into account, what's the overall strategy, the outlook for Telangana as they grapple with these tariffs?
Well, it seems like they're taking a multi-pronged approach. First, they're really pushing for market diversification. That means looking beyond the U.S. market, strengthening trade relationships with other countries. Second, they're focusing on playing to their strengths, focusing on sectors where the tariffs might have a less severe impact or where they have a competitive edge over other players. And of course, they're hoping for positive diplomatic outcomes between India and the U.S., maybe even actively working towards those solutions behind the scenes.
And it sounds like there's a lot of energy and adaptability on the ground.
Yeah, there's a definite sense of initiative. The government is busy talking with industry leaders, brainstorming solutions, and businesses are showing a real willingness to adapt and adjust their strategies as things unfold. There's this underlying resilience in Telangana's key industries: IT, pharma, agriculture, textiles, a determination to weather this storm.
So, for our listeners tuning in, what's the biggest takeaway from our deep dive into Telangana's response to these U.S. tariffs?
Well, the key message here is that Telangana isn't just sitting back and taking it. They're being proactive, strategic, and forward-thinking. They're exploring new possibilities, making the most of their existing strengths, and approaching this whole situation with a sense of, let's figure this out and come out stronger on the other side.
It's a really compelling example of how interconnected the global economy truly is, and how actions in one part of the world can ripple out and create these dynamic responses in other regions. It makes you wonder, given Telangana's potential and this ever-changing global trade landscape, what innovative solutions or unexpected partnerships might emerge from this challenge in the months ahead. It'll be fascinating to see how this plays out.
It definitely will.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more insights into the ever-evolving world of global trade.
See you next time.